Hey guys, so I thought I'd do this video because I've seen a lot of TTCers actually do it, and after going through as many IVF cycles as I've gone through, um, 7 in total, and including one failed IVF, going on to my 8th, there are some things that I wish I had known in the early beginning stages about IVF that I feel if I had known at the time, then I would have probably made maybe better decisions and, uh, been made aware. So I'm going to list those right now and actually wrote them down. So I'm going to be referring on my notes here because this is important information. So the first thing, guys, that I wish I knew about IVF that I found out much later is that there are 4 flavors. So it's not a one fits all. And I remember back in the day, I would watch other TTCers who had situations like poor response, and there was people from all ages, like they were not able to produce the number of follicles that would qualify for the retrieval. I thought that that was IVF. I didn't know that that was an issue for a particular type of IVF from the 4. So you can imagine the frustration. And so I'm so grateful for the TTCers who shared their journey before mine, because I was able to, through their struggle, learn this, that, make sense of it, and kind of just find out information about it. Because I also ended up being the type of person where the one type did not work. So the 4 types of IVF that are out there, just for you to know, so that if your situation does not fit within the typical IVF, then you can know that you have options, are as follows. First is obviously the standard, what they call the conventional IVF. So this is the IVF where you're paying a lot of money, sometimes up to a package deal of like $25,000 out of pocket. It's for women that have a very, very good ovarian reserve. So they are able to retrieve multiple eggs to increase their chances and build their family from that one cycle, when they get the embryo. So that is a conventional IVF. Now, what I discovered afterwards was that there is another type of IVF called minimal stimulation IVF. That was what I needed, because the what they do is they stim you differently because you produce fewer follicles. So they maximize the opportunity for you to be able to grow your follicles, and then they will retrieve the follicles that you have. And the reason why that made a lot of sense for me is I remember there was a time when I was like, they keep talking about age being a factor. So if you are of a certain age and you're not producing the 3 minimum for retrieval, that cycle goes to waste, and maybe those eggs were good. So I remember I always was like, well, I know age is a factor, so I know my eggs now are better than a year from now, so why would they cancel? So that's kind of how I made kind of researched and kind of putting the pieces together. So, and as you've seen in my videos, the 3 doctors that I researched were Dr. Saul Silber in Missouri. My own RE right now is Frank Yillian. I think Frank Yillian is the best. He's in LA, Life IVF Center. And then Dr. Zhang, also in New York. He also does minimal stimulation IVF. And all these 3 doctors are actually specialists for women who have what we call age-related fertility, which is what I have, infertility to my age. And they deal with women in their 40s. And this was actually the first doctor that actually called me young, because I started working with him when I was 42, I think, going on to 43. But he considers a 41-year-old young, which is true because of the success rate his clinic has had. So that was minimal stimulation IVF. And then there's another type of IVF called ultra minimal stimulation IVF. And this is where they use probably just like half a tablet of Clomid, just they just stim you just a little bit to be able to see if they can get those follicles to, grow. and that's an option as well. And then the last one is natural cycle IVF. So it is literally an IVF protocol where if you have like issues that are preventing you from, like enabling fertilization, so you don't need medications or anything like that. Yours is, you know, an issue that can just be solved through the in vitro procedure. So natural cycle IVF is useful for that. And also for women who are only, notice that they only produce one egg, no matter how much they stim, just one, then it's giving that egg at that time based on its youth, for lack of a better word, to maximize the chances for success. And so that was so powerful for me because when I learned from many other TT, people who are trying to conceive, because they would go years, maybe having a cancel cycle. And I'm thinking, but the clock is ticking and those eggs could have been maximized. So yeah, that's something that I learned. Okay. The second thing I learned about IVF, guys, that is absolutely critical is that it doesn't always work the first time. It may not work the second, it may not work the third. IVF is a numbers game. What you're trying to do is to get to the embryo that is going to be the best quality to be able to give you the live birth, because that's what you want. You want a baby. And so it may not happen the first time. Now, again, with conventional IVF, when people have good ovarian reserve, they only do it once, they get a lot of, might get a lot of follicles and build their family that way. Even for those protocols with conventional IVF, some people go through it once or twice. But when it comes to minimal stimulation, which is the type of IVF that I'm undergoing, because of the minimal stimulation in terms of the meds and the hormones pumped in, I was able to go through, to be able to keep going. And so I am actually now have completed 7 IVF cycles, and actually one was a failed one, so it would be 8. And failed meaning that the egg wasn't there because I'm a poor responder. So I produce very little eggs. I started off with just producing 1 egg each month. And then obviously as the protocol kept working, I started all of a sudden producing 3 eggs and then 4 eggs as time went on. But just, it is a numbers game and you just have to keep going. And how I made sense of it was the research I did on embryo probability because of age. So for my age, the likelihood of an embryo to be genetically normal is 1 out of 8 and 1 out of 10 as we speak. So that's kind of like the math I used for the number of eggs that were being removed and kind of counting. And I can do a separate video on how I did that, but that in my head was how I kind of estimated how many cycles I needed to take. And because my doctor is a specialist with women who are 40 and above, he actually had data on the likelihood and the chances of women my age with kind of like my hormone levels, how many times that they had to go through in order to get a live, in order to get a euploid embryo, rather. The goal for me was always to get a euploid embryo because one thing I learned about the TTC community is that there was a lot of older women who went through miscarriage and miscarriage really in the scientific term is an embryo that probably had an abnormality and the body was trying to get rid of it because it didn't have that. So in my head, one of the things I'm so grateful for is learning about that. So I always have the embryo stay up to day 5 and be tested. Because the culture conditions at my lab are great at the Life IVF Center. I trust the culture, procedure that they do there. And I just, because miscarriage is just, it's really difficult. And if there was one lesson I learned was to just trust the process, let it go to the 5th day. If it makes it to the 5th day, get it tested, because then it will give you information. And we were blessed enough to have had 3 embryos that we were able to have tested, not at one time, but over the span of doing my 7 IVF cycles. And one of them came back euploid. The other 2 came back with complex aneuploid. And And then they would explain, the epigenetics of it as well. So I think I'm a huge fan of that. So that is definitely something, a second tip that you can share. The Life IVF Center actually has a client who was willing to, a patient rather, who was willing to share her experience at a webinar. Her name is Lock-In, and she was 44, 45, has a baby boy, so live birth. And there's a video on the Life IVF channel if you are over 40 and you just were curious about Dr. Yili and the protocols that he uses, which is the protocol that I use. So absolutely, yeah. Okay. The third and most important thing I learned about IVF that I wanted to share with you guys is that protocol actually matters. Protocol matters. I think I kind of knew this right away thanks to other people who were trying to conceive, because your body will kind of communicate with you if something is too aggressive or too much. And I remember, my conventional cycle was disastrous. There was a poor response. I only had one follicle, and it only grew to 17 millimeters after $5,000 worth of medications. So that, to me, it was just so blatantly clear that even if my doctor, who at the time was willing to kind of tweak and work with me, I knew that they were limited because they were willing to tweak and work it within the conventional approach, which is pump the body with as many hormones as you can to get the maximum number of eggs. And I needed a protocol that catered to me. I was never going to produce that many eggs, but I needed a specific one to tease my eggs to be able to mature and grow. And so I needed that attention. And Dr. Frank Gillian is a specialist at that. So he was able to do it. He actually improved my FSH from 65 to now I'm averaging FSH at baseline of 6 to 7 just by his protocol. So that already let me know that, thank goodness, I that was not right for me. The other thing about IVF, the last thing, I know this video is getting long, but I wanted to share with you guys just based on my experience, is this. It's okay to change doctors. Now, I know that that's very hard to do. I know it was hard for me to do as well, but it is okay. It is perfectly fine for you to change your doctor. And how I did it was I would just sincerely apologize, and I would say, because sometimes you have a good relationship with that doctor. It's just that that doctor may not be the right fit for you. So there was even a time when I was going to do a minimal stimulation IVF with a different protocol. I found out about Dr. Yillian at a webinar. That was God that just, he does webinars twice a month. Life IVF Center, you can take a look at them, where past patients talk about their experiences, and he provides an overview of his clinic. And I had a minimal stimulation at the physician I was working with at the time, the ER I was working with at the time. And so I decided to just run the protocol, because I always knew that I needed to figure out the protocol, even if the umbrella was minimal stimulation. And when I ran that protocol with my doctor, Dr. Yillian, the new doctor, he said, no, that's not in his 30 years of experience as an RE, he felt that that was not the best protocol. So then my decision was clear, and I decided to move with him. And obviously, we are where we are. So as we speak right now, my progress is in October of 2020, I was able to have one euploid embryo, and we're trying to get another one. So that's kind of where we are. Hence why I'm doing my IVF Cycle 8. We think it's going to be our last cycle. We will be so blessed to have one child, especially considering our age. We had it in us to continue to see the hopes that we could get another one. But the probability of a normal embryo actually does go down with age. And since I will be 44, it is actually a 1 out of 20 eggs is genetically normal. So yeah, something that I need to think about as well, because my birthday's coming up. So that's where we are. So fingers crossed, the journey is not over yet. This is a very difficult journey, but I just thought that I would capture this moment to kind of just share with you where I am, the lessons that I've learned as I continue with my journey in the hopes that it will help you. All right. Thanks for watching. What have you learned about IVF? Is there anything you've learned that you can share? Actually, let's share in the comments because I think it does help. I remember I always used to read the comments after each video just to see what other people had to say. So, and I know I'm definitely missing something. So please go ahead and put that down there. All right. See you guys later. Thank you for watching. I'll keep you posted. Bye.